Welcome to DunnWise Perspectives, a podcast about stories of resilience and shifting mindsets. I'm your host, Doris Dunn. My guests are leaders, entrepreneurs, and everyday people who've navigated change, faced uncertainty, and discovered new ways of thinking when life didn't go according to plan. If you're navigating a season of change, feeling stuck, or simply curious about how small mindset shifts can lead to meaningful progress, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of DunnWise Perspectives. And today we have a very special guest, Tremale Delano, that I met through Toastmasters. And if you know anything about me, I'm a huge fan of Toastmasters. I am the founder of the Franklin Toastmasters in Franklin, Tennessee, that began in the late 1990s. And I did leave the Franklin Toastmasters and joined one in California. And then when I came back to Tennessee a few years ago, I rejoined Franklin Toastmasters, and I've had the pleasure of hearing Tremale speak a number of times. And Tremale is a fantastic speaker. And last year he competed in the International Speech Contest and went quite a long way. And he is competing again in 2026. And I have a pretty sneaky suspicion. I don't have a crystal ball, but I think he's going to go really far again this year. And he is, again, an excellent speaker. And he not only is an excellent speaker, but his stories are impactful. They draw you in. The rest of the world goes away when Tremale tells a story. And the last speech that he gave, which is the International Speech Contest, he's going to go a long way with that speech. But when he shared that speech and his background, I thought, I need to have him on the podcast. He has an incredible story, an incredible shift in mindset from very early age. That is something that everyone needs to hear. And so I am so excited to have Tremale on the show today. Welcome, Tremale. Can you share a little bit about who you are? Just tell us a little bit about you.
Sure. Thanks, Doris. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I spent most of my life in Los Angeles, California. I was born and raised in California and came out to Tennessee in 2023. My background professionally by trade was in architectural design and construction management. I went to school in Washington, D.C., and then hightailed it back to L.A., avoid the snow, so to speak. But yeah, that's still a large part of what I do, construction, real estate management. But I've developed a passion for storytelling and public speaking because it has gone hand in hand as I've had a lot more time now being an adult to reflect on my life experiences. It's been a very useful tool to be able to share my story with clarity and conviction. And so it's been very helpful. And that's why Toastmasters has been helpful for me as well.
I hear architectural design. And if someone says, yes, I'm an architectural design, the first thought is, I'm sure that your mother or father must have been an excellent architect. And that is probably where you got your desire and you were following in your parents' footsteps in architectural design. And that couldn't be further from the truth. Tell us a little bit about your early childhood and some of the struggles that you had from early on.
Sure. Yeah. There's one fact about me that always mm, reminds me of my experience, and that is that no picture of me prior to 2 years old, as far as I'm aware, exists. The earliest memories that I have that are photographed right now are all 2 years and above because between my birth and the age of two, I was being passed around through the foster care system around in Los Angeles County. So my birth mother, unfortunately, and this is something that still is in the headlines today with opioid crisis and drugs, but unfortunately, my mother got caught up in that in the 80s and had a challenge with drug addiction. And so I was born during her struggle with that. And so after 6 months of caring for me, she basically relinquished her parental rights to my aunt. And then again, my aunt relinquished her parental rights 6 months later. So there was just this period of every 6 months, it felt like my caretaker or my mom was returning me back to the store, so to speak.
Tell me, how could a 6-month-old be so much trouble?
I can only imagine, but looking at some of the reports that I have that give me a little bit of glimpse into the history, apparently I had effects from my mom's usage when I was in the womb. I believe the reports noted that I had fetal alcohol syndrome. And apparently, I think the chief characteristic was I was described as an inconsolable kid. So apparently, I would cry for 3 to 4 hours at a time, and there was nothing that could be done to console me. Some
You
doctors
were
had
probably
speculated.
going through withdrawals.
Yeah, some doctors had speculated. I was exactly as you mentioned, going through withdrawals from alcohol that was placed in my bottle to calm me when I was younger. But yeah, it's hard to make sense of it, especially now that I have 2 kids. And so I had this crazy experience when I held my daughter for the first time when she was 2 years old,
Mm,
because it was the first time that I saw an image of what I must have looked like. Because she looked fairly similar to me. And I remember holding her one day and looking at her and thinking, who in the world could let this little angel
yeah.
go? And so I had that moment just trying to make sense of it, but I made peace with it. I understand it, and I understand it through the perspective of how it's helped me become the person I am today, which has been a long journey, but it's been a worthwhile one.
Wow. And you shared with me before we hit record that you have had an on and off relationship with your mom, and she has tried to come back in your life. Tell me a little bit about the forgiveness, or the inability to forgive, or the ability to forgive, or how did your mind wrap itself around the fact that she left, then she came back, she left again? How do you manage through that?
Sure. So my foster mother, Ruth Ann Hobart, that was her name, the woman who not only took me in, but 5 other foster kids, high risk foster kids that no one really wanted. She was a very principled person, a very spiritual person, a very religious person. And so, very early on, when I was younger, the concepts of forgiveness and acceptance were embedded within me. She didn't take the route of trying to hide that I was hers. I don't know when I found out that I was a foster kid, but as far back as I can remember as a kid, I've known. So it was very important for her to let us know as early as it was practical, given our developmental state, where we came from, but intercept that and also say, by the way, I still expect greatness out of you, just so you know.
Yeah.
So it's almost as if she reached forward and tried to take away the possibility of us finding out that later, in that sense of worthlessness that you feel, or the people who brought you into this world didn't want you. It's almost like she wanted to get that out of the way so she could do the heavy lifting, which is getting us to believe in the
Mm.
idea that we could become more. So she helped instill those ideas. And my birth mother was forbidden by court order ever having any contact with me when I was very young. There was a hearing, but I believe I was around in the 11th grade where my mom, Ruth Ann Hobart, my foster mom, let me know that she had received a voicemail. And she had explained to me, like, hey, by the way, she's not allowed, but I'm going to leave it up to you. It is your choice. Do you want to call her back, or do you want to email back, or what have you? And on the basis that she raised me, forgiveness, I was like, sure. And so I remember writing her this email, and she later described it, brought tears to her eyes because I came right out with it. I forgive you. And this is without me even knowing the story. I forgive you. God always has a plan, because again, raised with that line of thinking when I was younger, and that opened the door. But we're all human. And ultimately, after the adrenaline rush of a new experience, you start to get to know people, and you have to make a decision on what is going to best support your future growth. And so that's been something I've had to wrestle with as my mom continues to wrestle with the struggles of her past, which continue to be ongoing.
Yeah.
So it's a work in progress, shall we say.
So I want to talk about Ruth Ann for a minute. You said she took in 5 foster children, and it sounds like
6, including me,
6. So 5 other fosters. So she was raising 6 between the ages of what, 2 to 4 ish?
as young as infants, 6
Yeah,
months
6
younger.
months.
younger.
So
Sometimes.
really young kids. And she instilled in you this, I expect greatness out of you. Do you think that she saw greatness in each one of you, or she didn't really care what your background was? She just knew that there was potential in every single child that was living under her roof.
It was the latter. My mom just believed in the idea that everyone has potential. I don't care where you come from. If you were to look at our rap sheets, that and if you even look at our life experiences early on, none of it suggested that we would at all follow a trajectory because we came with some pretty heavy baggage. But she just had this belief. She loved kids. She had daycare, and before us, there were many other foster kids that she had temporarily for years. She probably, over the span of her life, had 10, 12, 15 kids directly in her care, and then she had daycare. So she just had this firm belief around what can happen when you instill love and care within a kid, that it can allow someone to nourish. And she certainly tried to instill that within us to the best she could.
Where do you
And
think she got that from? Where did she learn that, or what made her so special? Because you hear terrible things about the foster system and foster parents, and some people doing it just for the money. And obviously, this that she did it differently. What made her so different, and what were other success stories besides you?
Sure. Yeah. I think it comes from her deeply rooted spirituality. She saw this as her calling, to take the
Mhm.
kids that no one thought had a chance, and almost to show the world, hey, don't give up on these kids. And hey, just so we're clear, I'm going to show you, I'm going to give you the roadmap. So I'm going to take the kids nobody wants, right? And I'm going to keep them even when they break my heart over and over again. I'm going to show them the power of love and the power of commitment and consistency. And it wasn't just me. So my brother, Janelle, even in high school, he was considered a world renowned pianist. He was doing music concerts all over the place, competed in international music competitions in high school. But that was my mom. She put all of us in music lessons. Some took to things so that some of the girls were in ballet, piano lessons. So the arts were a big part of what she felt was important because it was a form of expression. My other sister went on to college and nursing school. So a lot of us have had success that kind of belie the standard trajectory of our peers. And I think a lot of it has to do with the manner in which she raised us. And
Yeah.
I don't mean to understate the difficulty with which it took for us to get to where we were, but it certainly stands out as a differentiator when you reflect back,
Yeah.
the values that she instilled.
I want to talk about one of those values because you shared earlier with me what happened when you and your brother would get into a fight and the punishment that she instilled. And I love this story, and I'd love for you to share what your punishment was.
Yeah, so my mom is what I would call an innovative punisher. She had some very unique methods. One of her go-tos was, some parents will have you write standards. She would often make me go write pages and pages out of a dictionary. She'd make me find words and write the definition of them on paper as an alternate form of standards. Make me go take the Bible and write out pages and pages of Bible verses and come back and let's go talk about it. I want you to keep writing until your hand feels like it's going to fall off. But the biggest one is, I remember one time me and my brother got into a pretty bad fight. And as punishment, she made us figure out what bus we needed to take to get to a library 30 minutes away in a whole nother city. And we had to go together. We had to go find a book, read it, write a book report, and we could not come back home until we had it in hand. And I remember that moment specifically because we got lost so many times and we literally had to put our differences aside and work as a team to try to figure out how to get back home. And so, in her grand wisdom of things, yeah, I didn't just get a book report out of that. I got some wayfinding navigational skills out of it too.
Oh, absolutely. Oh my goodness. So I want to, so the college, you're an architectural designer, and what inspired that? How did you go from the foster care system? You graduated from high school and you found yourself in college in Washington, D.C. What inspired architectural design?
I grew up in South Central Los Angeles. A lot of the residents there often would do their own home additions often. And so I happened to live next door to a gentleman who was also a carpenter. And so there was something about buildings that always boggled my mind. It felt like magic. How can one day there be nothing there and then all of a sudden there's a structure standing there? And the wind, for the most part, Los Angeles can't knock it down. It keeps you out of the weather and the place called home. So buildings were like a marvel to me. And I remember one day I was watching him build something because I would just ride my bike around the neighborhood and just watch people build things for hours and get lost in it. One day I had the courage to go up to him and I said, you know what? I had to be, I had to have been in the seventh grade, sixth grade. I said, I want to be just like you when I grew up. And he was a carpenter. And he came over to my house and he sat on the porch next to me. He laughed and he said, I'm very flattered, but you don't want to be like me. Trust me. Let me tell you what you should do. What you should do is go be an architect. And what they do is they build things, but on paper. And it'll be great for you. And the secret is when you turn 40, your knees will still work. Oh, ever since I was there, that age, I decided that's what I want to do. So from literally around the sixth grade, I knew what I wanted to do and got accepted into the School of Architecture at Catholic University in Washington, D.C., successful internships. But then just through all the professional experience, I decided to take an intermediate track. And so instead of becoming a professional architect and becoming a licensed architect, I pivoted into commercial construction management. And so I became part of the teams that help build the buildings and manage the buildings, but not necessarily with my hands. It's
Yeah.
the scheduling, the budgeting, the logistics of it all. I discovered that I had a great passion in the dynamic nature of that experience. And that's what I have spent the last 20 years of my life primarily doing is bringing commercial projects to life.
I love it. You said something earlier that kind of stuck with me. You said something about the building being a home. I wonder if there's some symbolism there where you had a wonderful home and a wonderful foster mom that took care of you. But I'm sure in the back of your mind, there was a little bit of niggling about this is a wonderful home, but I want to build my own home. I want to build a home with a family. Do you think that there's some symbolism in this architectural design and this looking at your neighbor and seeing him build something and saying there's something magical about it and the building becomes a home and the home is where the family is? And I just wonder if that somehow ties together from a symbolism perspective and where you wound up making the decision to start your career.
That's a great thought for some additional reflection. I've actually never ever considered that, but there could be some credence there to that. I was allowed to wonder when I was a kid. I was allowed to be a kid in a lot of different ways. And I think that letting that curiosity kind of roam, starting with just playing with Legos and taking things apart. I got into so much trouble taking things apart and trying to put them back together. Vacuum cleaners. One day I got it in my mind that I was going to take the motor out of a vacuum cleaner and put it in my wagon and I was going to make a go-kart. I want you to imagine how that went. To ruin their vacuum cleaner. But
That
I
sounds
was,
like that sounds like something my husband would do.
yeah. Yeah, so I think that it was certainly influenced by the environment that my foster mom created that allowed me to just explore. And who knows, maybe the roots do lead back to, at the end of the day, everyone wants a shelter, a place called home. And maybe that's probably a deeper concept that sort of
Yeah.
resided within me.
So tell me about the speech that you're writing now. We I know we spent a little bit of time talking about your mom and the speech that I had the pleasure of just listening to talked a little bit about your dad. And okay, spoiler alert, we I know from the speech that you thought this one person was your father and it inspired a lot of who you became. And later you discovered that someone else was your father. Can you share a little bit about that, what inspired, you knew you were going to be this one person because your dad was an attorney, right? And then when you discovered your dad was someone else, what process happened in your mind? And then how did you keep your original dad as part of who you are?
Sure. So growing up, we talked a little bit about my mom. So the flip side is that my dad, at least the man at the time that's named on my birth certificate, he was married to another woman at the time that I was conceived. And so the story that was told to me very young is that while my foster mom and a lot of people around me were aware of who my dad was, he had legal advertisements that played on TV. His family was known in personal injury, I believe, some type of legal sense in that legal sphere. But it was made clear to me that they didn't want to have anything to do with me. Forbidden fruit. I don't fit in the profile. And so from a very young age, I knew about him, but there was almost this deep resistance. So when I found out that my dad was this brilliant attorney, that kind of stuck with me. And my mom would often tell me, hey, just so you know, you come from brilliance. Don't forget that. She'd remind me in a bunch of different contexts. And it almost became a rally cry for me is that, okay, if they don't want me, I'm going to become so big one day that they're going to come looking for me. And so there was this like dichotomy of I'm going to take your superpower, right? Your brilliance that I inherited. You didn't give it to me. I have it, but I'm going to use it to become bigger than what you ever thought. And so it's this thing where I found belief that I could become something because of my background, my history, the people I thought, the man who I thought was my dad, but also being driven by this desire to prove them wrong. And so there was this healthy, there was like this partial acceptance of what they gave me, but this rejection of ever being with them. I imagined these moments where I designed this big skyscraper and my name is on it, and they come to the grand opening and they want to shake my hand, and I say, no, I'm rejecting you now. There's just those
Yeah,
kind of kid
yeah.
fantasies. And so that drove a large part of my identity when I was younger. And I certainly needed something to drive me because I had a whole bunch of educational challenges, dyslexic, was placed in special education classes to the point that I was pretty significantly behind in school. And so things clicked and life started to come together through a huge part of my foster mom supporting my development. And my life was playing out just as I planned it. I graduated, I found success. I was building high rises, not high rises that I owned, but I was building high rises. I got to a point where I was building my own buildings, mid-rise buildings that was going to put my daughter's name on. So that fantasy that I had as a kid was starting to come true until my wife did something that kind of just blew up my whole world. And she told me that, hey, just so you know, I've been like looking into your dad's family. And I know you don't want to, and I know I ask you, but I saw an article about like how your dad died. And so that set us off on this whole thing. And then when she got pregnant with our first kid, that made me completely start to rethink my relationship with my past and my dad. And my wife's perspective was always maybe the story you told wasn't true. Maybe they've evolved. Maybe there's younger cousins and brothers and sisters. You never know. I want our kid to experience that because I grew up on family. My wife did. Family was very important for her. And she didn't want me to be robbed of that, and she wanted our future kid to be robbed of that experience either. And so COVID times, and it did not take very long for me to pierce through and find them. It wasn't very hard with all the modern technology. And it turns out that I found them. And just as my wife had explained or hoped, they were accepting and they wanted me to be a part of it. And we did a DNA test on the same day. And it turned out that it wasn't true. And so I had my whole life. And it wasn't just this idea that my dad's brilliance came from me, it was this whole drive of proving them wrong. I didn't have anyone to prove wrong anymore because it wasn't true. But my wife, being the eternal optimist that she is, she's like, Tremel, do you know what this means? No. It means your dad might still be alive. And I'm like, whoa. She went on this journey for about a year trying to figure it out. And she found my real dad. She did over the course of a year. And it helped me resolve some things about myself. And I think the biggest thing that this experience showed me is that, wow, okay, so I have to process this. A lot of my advancement in life, I attribute to the fact that my dad gifted me certain abilities and was driven by this idea that my family didn't want me. So I had this extra drive, but it turned out to not be true. And so I was trying to reconcile that. And at the end of the day, where I landed at was just an appreciation that I am where I am today. No matter how I got here, there was this deep appreciation for a moment that, wow, it's crazy that I would not be here if not for those misunderstandings and
Yeah.
lies, right? That I believed. And it completely changed my mindset to really start to look into this concept that life is not black and white. It's gray, it's messy, it doesn't fit on neat little posters. It's pages and pages of contradictory information that you have to take in as a whole. But if you do that, you'll be given a gift. And that gift is the gift of perspective and realizing that all of it came together to make you who you are. And so that's been a huge mindset shift for me as I've kind of grown.
Yeah. The thing that's so interesting about that story, and that I think I want our listeners to understand, is that the mind is incredibly powerful. And you can, especially if you instill something in your children or your foster children, like you had in your case, and everyone believed it. They believed it so much that you made it true. It turned that, like you said, if you didn't have that belief, who knows where you'd be today? Who knows what you would have believed? I still strongly believe that your foster mom would have still said, you're destined for greatness. She wouldn't have cared what your history was because she had so much belief in you. But there was still a part of that story that made you want to strive, made you want to move forward, made you want to prove something to the family that you thought was your real family. And that the mind is so incredibly powerful that it can achieve things that maybe other people think we can't achieve, or parts of us think we can't achieve. And at the end of the day, we can achieve it. And I don't know if maybe you want to speak to that a little bit. And we spent a little bit of time on mindset, but given how you are today and the person that you are today, how has mindset maybe shifted what your future could look like, or what you think, how you think about mindset in the decisions that you make today, or how you raise your children?
Sure, absolutely. It's actually a little annoying because it's almost like I've become depression resistant, shall I say, if that's a word.
Sure, we'll say it's a word.
Yeah, if it's a word, yeah. Even when I have moments of extreme disappointment and things not going
Disappointment in
my way,
yourself or disappointment.
disappointment in life in general, right?
Hmm.
I wanted this certain result. I wanted to have this done by the end of the year, or this really bad thing just happened to me in life and it feels so unfair. Why me? Why me? After the initial moments of that, there is always this place that comes to me that says, okay, Tremel, these doors have closed. Where's the hidden door that just opened? You got to
Hmm.
find it, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't see the world in this duality where it's either you made it or you didn't, you won or you lost. It's like, hey, this door just slammed shut. Look for the other door. There's got to be another door somewhere.
There's
And
always
that
another
journey,
door. Yes.
that journey of where is it? Where is it? Is it there? Is it there? Is it in the ceiling? Do I need to teleport out of here? Can I teleport? When you accept this idea that not it's I don't have the belief necessarily that all things happen for a reason, but I do believe in cause and effect. I believe that when one thing happens, it causes something else to happen,
Mm.
and your mindset is what allows you to keep the story going.
Yeah,
And
the
and I
butterfly effect, right?
sure. Yeah, so that's really been the biggest change is that it's made me super curious to make sure that I didn't miss anything. Hey, am I looking at this the wrong way? I know this might be what I want, or like last year, I really wanted to speak to a bunch of different audiences, but the speech that I wanted to give, here I am a year later, and I realize that there's so much more depth to explore. There's a better, bigger story to tell, right? You have that perspective, you start to understand that life is always this work in progress. And if you can find a way to just enjoy that period of improvement and your hopes are up, your hopes are down, and then new hope, you'll always be moving forward in some way. So that's probably been the biggest shift for me.
I
And
love
I
that.
didn't grow up like that. It was hard for me to not see it that way because I was very kind of single track minded, and this is my go. I have to hit it. Failure is not an option. I have to hit it. So if I got to run 100 times, I'm going to run 100 times and I'm going to hit my goal. Now it's more like, all right, I keep running into the wall. Maybe I should look the other way to see if
Yeah.
this is where I should be going. Kind of
Yeah. Oh, I love
a
that.
different type of commitment.
But I agree, everything has a cause and effect. And I do the same thing. I think about my past and did I make wrong decisions in some ways? And I realize, you know what? Every decision was made for a reason, whether it felt or it feels today. Like, what if I had done something different? I might not be here speaking with you today. If I had gone in any different direction, again, that butterfly effect, that tiny little flap of a butterfly's wing can impact things that we don't even know or understand. And I think that we can try to move forward in a positive way. But I think that's a great analogy. If you keep hitting the wall, that maybe that 90th time is realize that maybe I do need to take another path. Maybe the path that I thought was really clear in front of me isn't as clear. And I need to go find even that third door. I know there is, and I don't remember who said it. I read it in a book, but it was by a Kathy Heller book, but she was quoting someone else who talks about the third door, where the first door is where everyone's standing in line and you're waiting. Just imagine you're trying to get into a popular nightclub and you're at the back of the line and you're watching VIPs go in front of you and you're just standing back there waiting and hoping that you can get in the door that you may never even get in. And then there's a second door that is a little less popular, but it's still, you can get through that door. But people forget about the third door that's hidden that maybe you don't even realize is there. And I think what you just talked about, the analogy of finding a different door, and don't try so hard towards something that you think is the right path. Maybe it is. Maybe you do need to just keep trying and plugging away. But if you keep hitting a wall, maybe try a different door or try a window.
Absolutely. I liken it to I love sweets, right? So I love ice cream and I love cookies. And the way I think someone really explained it to me is, you love ice cream, right, Tremale? Yes, I love it. I love chocolate ice cream. But have you ever had chocolate ice cream with all these different toppings and all these different flavors? So it's really, you have in your head what you think you like until you see something that is more nuanced, more ingrained, something more grand, and it shifts you. And then you start to think and question yourself of, do I want this because it's what I'm destined, or do I want this because it's the only thing I know right now? And really giving yourself the grace to acknowledge that maybe you don't know everything there is about you,
Yeah.
and finding out the rest is a journey. So that's been a helpful perspective for me to have as well.
Yeah. And obviously, we're all on a journey. Doesn't matter how old or how young we are, we're all on a journey, this journey called life. And I want to thank you so much, Tramel, for sharing your story with me. I think it's so powerful, and I am so happy that you are not one of the statistics. I know we talked earlier about the statistics of foster care children, and I wish we could wave a magic wand. I wish we could do something. I wish we could have 1,000 Ruth Ann Holberts, and that's who takes care of all the foster kids is all the Ruth Anns out there. And because we know that if a million Ruth Anns took care of foster kids, it wouldn't be that trail of foster care to prison and some of the other paths that go on. And I'm just so happy that you had the foster care mother that you did, that told you couldn't fail. You're destined for greatness. And she was 100% right that you were destined for greatness. You hit greatness. You continue to find greatness. And I am glad that I am able to call you friend. And I look forward to hearing many more speeches because I know there's a lot more creative juices flowing in speeches that you're going to give in the future. And I can't wait to see you on a big stage one day.
I appreciate that. And it's just been a true honor and privilege to count you as a friend. So thank you so much for everything and for having me today. It's been great.
Thank you, Tremale. Thank you for listening or watching this episode. If something from today's conversation resonated with you, I'd love for you to share this episode with someone who might need it, or take a moment to reflect on what stood out for you. You can find show notes wherever you get your podcasts. And if you enjoy the podcast, subscribing or leaving a review helps more people find these conversations. Until next time, keep learning, stay curious, and remember, sometimes a small shift in perspective can change everything.